Happy morning, everybody. That was, I think, quite low on a scale of 1 to 10. I would not rate you more than 3. Are you okay to start with 3? I can't start with 3. So one more chance. Happy morning, everybody. Happy morning. Good. So the topic is ontology, a very different topic. I'll take you through ontology. The context for today is unlocking human potential. So ontology is one perspective towards it. Let me start with a small story. So there's a village, and there are 3 different entrepreneurs in that village. So I'll name them so it becomes easy, and I'll tell you how ontology actually helped them. So the first villager is Mr. Anil. He runs a business of selling milk, and he has a monopoly over there. There are more than 500 villagers over there, and he's milking money from all 500 of them. He has set up a network in such a way that nobody would want to buy milk from somebody else. Now, there's another businessman, so-called, he wants to start his own business looking at Anil. So there's this guy called Sunil, and he wants to start another business, but on the same lines. Like, I would also start a business of selling milk. So Sunil also starts selling milk over there, but for whatever reason, Sunil is not able to sell anything because the entire market is dominated by Anil. Sunil waits, he waits for weeks, months, nothing happens. And trust me, actually nothing happens. Anil is doing what he's doing, he's milking all the customers, he has a monopoly. And then Nikhil comes in the picture because he sees Anil and he sees Sunil over there. He sees Anil is actually doing a great job over there. Nobody is able to actually tap his market, nobody is able to do anything for him. And then he also sees Sunil, that Sunil is just trying to venture into the market and he's not able to do anything. And in spite of all these dynamics, Nikhil still thinks, I can do something. And trust me, within a month, he turns the table around and Nikhil becomes the best seller in that particular village, and everybody starts buying milk from Nikhil. So the Anil's monopoly goes for a toss. Sunil is where he is, and Nikhil is now the new market leader. Now, how am I linking it to ontology? We'll just wait. So ontology, let's get into ontology. I'll tell you, and please remind me to give you the secret of what actually Nikhil did. Because Nikhil used some distinctions of ontology. So what's ontology? Let's look at ontology. Anybody over here has any idea about what's ontology? Anything about ontology? You have heard about ontology? Okay. Don't try to analyze it, just try to understand. It's very simple. Ontology is the science of the being. Onto is being, and logy is study. So it's like, it's the science of the being. We are trying to study the being. That's what ontology is. Science of the human being, why we do what we do, why we don't do what we don't do. So it gets deeper into it. That's the reason the topic is unlock human potential. I'm getting deeper into it from a different perspective. We have other speakers today who will give you a different perspective of using technology, innovation, and other ways of unlocking human potential. But I thought, let me get deeper into the human mind. It's just another perspective to lock the human potential. Okay. I'll ask you a couple of questions to still get deeper into it. Give me an example of something you know in life. So I'll look at 3 things. One is I know. So give me an example of I know something in life. Any example? Perfect. I know how to drive a car. I know how to operate a computer. I know blah, blah, blah. Give me an example of I don't know something in life. I don't know how to drive a car. I don't know Chinese language. I don't know XYZ. Give me an example of I don't know what I don't know. Please. So give me an example of I don't know what I don't know.
This is about myself.
No. Give me an example of I don't know what I don't know.
I don't know what is after death.
Yeah, but then you know that. Absolutely. How would I know that? So I don't know, what I don't know is a space of realm which is totally a blind spot altogether. Don't link it to any HR fundas of Johari window and all. Don't link ontology and psychology to this. We are all HR professionals. Don't try to link that. So I don't know, what I don't know is the space of ontology. Something very different. And that's what we are going to ponder and look at for the next 20 minutes we have over here. Okay, so I'll put 2 slides over here, and I just want all of you to look at those slides. There's slide A and there's slide B. Just be present with those slides and try to decipher something which is coming from those slides. So this is slide A. This is part A. In fact, I wasn't able to put part A and part B in the same slide. That's why I put it into 2 different slides. Just try to understand what's written over there. So I'll read it out for you. A newspaper is better than a magazine. A seesaw is better place than a street. At first, it is better to run than to walk. You may have to try several times. It takes some skill, but it is easy to learn. Even young children can enjoy it. And each and every statement over here is linked to the other one. So the first statement, a newspaper, is also linked to running and walking, and it is also linked to the children and enjoying it. Please try to understand what's written. Are you able to come to some gist out of it? Each and every word, each and every statement is linked to the next word and the next statement over there. And I want you to understand and try to look at it. Pardon? Yeah, but what's that? Because I'm going to confuse you more with the next slide. I wasn't able to put both the data in the same slide, so I put in over here. So a newspaper is better than a magazine. At first, it's better to run than to walk. You may have to try several times. It takes some skill, but it is easy to learn. Even young children can enjoy it. So newspaper, running, walking, young children enjoyment. Pardon? Okay. So we are talking about a place in the beach. Okay. So how is newspaper related to a beach? Making a paper boat, superb. So making a paper boat, beach, newspaper.
It's a sequence in the morning.
Okay, it's a sequence in the morning. So newspaper, beach, sequence. What else? Please get into it, because that's what I want you to get into it. Running in the street, so newspaper, running in the street. Reading, okay, I need a newspaper in the morning to read. Any correlation between the 3 statements, because every word, every statement is linked to the next. And if you are confused, let me confuse you more, because everything on this slide is linked to the next slide. So newspaper, running, walking, and enjoyment, paper boat is linked to the next slide. Once successful, complications are minimal. Birds seldom get too close. Rain, however, soaks in very fast. Too many people doing the same things can cause problems. One needs lots of room. If there are no complications, it can be very peaceful. A rock will serve as an anchor. So what was there in first slide? Newspaper is better than a magazine. It's better to run or walk. And then kids and enjoyment. And every statement of slide number 1 is linked to every word and statement of this slide. So now we have got birds over here. And now you have got rain over here, and you also have too many people doing the same thing, makes it complicated, and you also have a rock will serve as an anchor. Are you able to get the gist? Each and every word of slide A is linked to each and every word and statement of slide B.
Newspaper will soak very fast in rain.
Okay, so a newspaper will soak very fast in the rain, okay. But then what about the beach and running and walking?
Too many people are walking or running at the same time.
So how too many people walking and running are same thing related to a newspaper? Everything is related. That's what I told you. Each and every word, each and every statement is linked to the next word and the next statement.
Maybe news about marathon.
So news about marathon, okay, then how come birds comes into the picture? You are on a superb. So you are on the ship and sailing. Okay, you are at the seashore. Perfect. So rocks are there in the seashore. Yes. Titanic. Fantastic. Confused? Yes? Okay. So now if we have to go back to slide number A, newspaper, magazine, walking, running, kids enjoying it, and go back to slide number B, once successful, complications are minimal, birds seldom get close to it, rain, however, soaks in fast, too many people doing the same thing can cause problems, rock will serve as an anchor. Now if you give a title to it called kites, K-I-T-E-S, how does it look? Kites, patang. So if you give a title to it called kites, how does this slide look like? And how does this slide look like? If I've given a title called kites, if I replace part A and part B by kites, both the slides makes 100% sense. Yes or no? Yes? So what was missing? What was missing was context. So one of the biggest phenomenal distinctions of ontology is context. Context is decisive. Without a context, nothing works. You need to have a very powerful context for anything and everything. You may have the best of content with you, because this was the content, one of the best content. But then, without the context is useless. Context drives the content. And context is very important. Whether you're working in an organization or you are a professional, everything is driven by a context, because context is going to lead to something else. So I'll come back to the second one also. So clear about this context. I'll give you another example of this. How many of you drive? So many of you might have driven your car, and let's say there's somebody on the road in front of you actually driving very slow. What happens? So हम क्या बोलते हैं when we get irritated? Oi! What's happening? And you start using all the languages in your mind. जो बोल रहा है मन ही मन बोलते रहते हैं. Yes or no? And typically in Bombay it works very well. So when driving, if you have ever gotten annoyed by being held up behind a slow driver, so it goes on for 5 minutes. You're able to maneuver and you're trying to overtake, but still you're not able to do it. You cross the first signal, kuch nahi, the person is still ahead of you. You try to get into the second signal, and somehow you're able to come closer to it, and then you see that the car is being driven by your old grandfather. Will the context remain the same, or will it change? Why? Because context is decisive. So context is very important. I'll give you another example, a business scenario. Two salespeople, and this was actually a live case which happened. They went to a place where they were supposed to sell footwear. One of the guys came back within a day or two. The other guy didn't turn up for a month. And those were the days when mobiles were not there. And everybody was waiting, where has he disappeared? No calls, nothing. And the first guy who came back, he was asked by his manager, why did you come back? And he said, there's no market for footwear over there. Nobody is wearing footwear. But this guy who didn't turn back, and he waited for around 30 days, 45 days, when he came back, he said, what a market. Nobody is wearing footwear. This is the place where we need to sell our footwear. What was different between the two?
Perspectives.
The context. Context is very, very important, friends. Okay, so I'll give you some food of thoughts, because ontology is something which cannot be just covered in 30 minutes, but I'll give you a food of thought. What was your context before you came? So yesterday, what was your context when you wanted to come to Tajlands? What was going on in your mind? Were you nominated? Okay, I have to come here because my boss told me over here. What was your context today morning when you came here? What's your context now? And what's your context for the day? Because context will lead you to something very powerful, which I'm going to come in the next slide. Everything starts with a context. And that actually leads to our behavior and other aspects, which I'm going to come to it. Because context leads to your being, and being is very important. Being is very, very important because that's the most important distinction of ontology after context. Context sets the tone, and being is how you behave after you set the context. So what's your context for the day? I don't know. Context could be anything for the day. Context could be just, okay, it's a Wednesday and it's a midweek, okay, blah, blah, blah. So set your context for the day because this is going to decide your being for the day. So far clear? Yes, no, maybe? Yeah? So turn to the person sitting next to you and give him a high five and tell him you are awesome. And I need to hear it well. Huh? The person sitting next to you, to the right of you, yeah? Give a big high five and say you are awesome. I couldn't hear that awesome. I couldn't hear that high five also. It has to be louder. This person sitting next to you, hey, high five, and you are awesome. I hope you are getting something out of it because ontology is something which you need to really be present to it. So when I say present to it, it talks about being in the present. So context sets the tone. Let's get into being. Any idea what do you mean by being? Wild guesses, any definition? I'm absolutely fine because you said ontology is a new subject we are trying to learn. Anything what you understand or whatever you feel you know about the word called being, B-E-I-N-G. Being in the present, okay. Now, okay.
State of mind.
State of mind, yes, very closer to it. Awareness, existing. Being is in the present, my present state of mind or my present being, the way I am behaving presently. It's a combination of my mental, physical, emotional, physiological, all clubbed together. That's my being. Yes. Why people don't change and why sometimes trainings and learnings don't work. So I come from a very hardcore HR and training background, but in spite of that, I know why people don't change and why in spite of all the budgets used by the L&D to transform people, to change people, nothing works. Why?
Mindset.
Okay, people don't want to change.
Mindset.
Mindset. People may want to change because that's the reason they might undergo some programs. They don't know what has to be changed. Okay. No, okay, we can try moving these patterns.
Because people do not change because their mind is sleeping.
Mind is sleeping.
Yes.
Okay. So people don't change because the mind is sleeping.
It has been empirically established.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
No, but we see in training programs or post-training programs in many companies, you see a change in behavior, you see a change in skills. That's all of the paper. Okay, you're very close to it. Yes? It has to be reinforced, ma'am.
When someone gets into a comfort zone, doesn't want to move out.
But still, after the training program, because it is linked to the performance management system and it is related to the KRAs, people do show some changes. But in spite of that, people don't change.
Basically, training is for skill set, whereas development is for the will set. So, will set has to be conscious.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Conscious mind changes, but the unconscious mind doesn't change.
Okay, okay. Okay. How it's going to solve by purpose? It's simple. People don't change because the being doesn't change. Simple as that. Simple formula. People don't change. Trainings and learnings don't work because the being has not been tempered. Being is the same. If your being, when you got into the class today or in this forum today, and you have not taken the distinction of context and being, even after knowing it, then your being is not going to change. So people undergoing a 2-day program or a coaching program or a 3-day program, anything, you put them into any program or any context of learning, they will not change if the being is not changed. And if the being changes, everything changes. So the major context to the entire learning cycle is the being. If the being changes, things will change. And we'll do a small role play also right now. I'll take you through the process, how does it work. Because if the being changes, everything changes. If the being doesn't change, nothing changes. So everything is related to the being. So it's a small formula which we'll go through to let you understand a little more deeper into it. So it's called the doing, having, and being formula. What are you doing? What do you have? And what are you being? I'll give you a classic example of a corporate life. What are you doing? What do you have? And what are you being? Because you're doing is the action. Whatever action you are taking will give you the having part. Doing is action, H is the having, and being is what you become when you do that. What you become when you do that. So let's say I have decided that today morning I get into my office, I'm going to really concentrate on my to-do list. I'm really going to complete at least 98% of what I'm supposed to do. But in spite of that, there are a lot of challenges which I face. So let's say I'm not productive. So what am I doing now? Not able to concentrate, get into too many things at the same time, lot of distractions. So I go with my to-do list at the morning, at 9 o'clock, I open my to-do list, I get an email, I get a disruptive call, I get a call from my boss, I have to do n number of things, and I keep on doing what I'm supposed to do. What do I have? Unfinished projects, pending work. So that's the having which I have, based on what I'm doing. What am I becoming in that case? Am I able to complete my pending work? I'm not able to complete my work. I become frustrated and annoyed. Now the moment my being is frustrated and annoyed, what kind of work I'm going to do? What kind of action I'm going to take? So from a person who's frustrated and annoyed, what kind of results will you get?
Negative.
You'll get the same results because his being is what? His being is confused, frustrated. What will be his doing? Doing will be the same things. He will not be productive because the being is getting distorted over here. So it's a simple formula. If you have to change the way you look at things, if you have to change the way you look at life, change your being. If you're able to change your being, a lot of things will happen.
It actually becomes a vicious cycle.
Yes. So we'll get into that. So context leads to being and being leads to your actions. Operate from your being. So let's do a role play. So the person sitting next to you will be a partner for this particular role play. So identify partner A and partner B, two people, A and B. So identify A and B. So one person can become A and the other person will become B. So please do that. A and B. So ma'am, you will be A, sir, you will be B. A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. You don't have a partner? You can be here. A, B. A, B identified. So all the A's, raise your hand. All the A's, raise your hand. Perfect. So it's a simple role play. And do it to understand ontology and do it to understand being. Because if you get it now, trust me, you'll get it. If you don't get it now, it will be difficult because ontology is something which cannot be analyzed. You have to actually get into it to understand ontology. So the first situation I'm going to give you, stay with that situation and work exactly like the situation I'm telling you. So the person A is the boss, person B is the subordinate. Now person A, when I say is the boss is the manager. The boss is the manager, the being of the manager. So now in your mind, you know the being of a manager. And person B is the subordinate. The situation is simple. It's a performance issue with the subordinate. And you as a boss operating from which being? Being of a manager. Don't dilute the being. If you dilute the being, you will not get this exercise. Be the manager, the being of the manager. I'll give you 2 minutes. You have to handle the person B, performance issue. Clear? Person A is the manager of the person B who's the subordinate. You are trying to have a discussion on the topic, some performance issues with the person B. You as person A is the manager, the being of the manager. Stay with that being of the manager, very important. Your time starts now. Please do that with the person B, person A and person B.
I have
Stick to the being. You don't have a partner? Identify a partner. You'll get one partner. A discusses with B the performance issues. Simple as that. Operating from the context of being a manager. You don't have a partner? You can join anyone. You can join anyone. No, subordinate is subordinate. No state of being of the subordinate. Person A behaves as a manager. You can scold the person B also. You can do that. You can scold the person B. The manager does not change the being. The manager stays in the being of a manager. How does a manager behave? Done? You got a gist of it. Okay. Okay. So you got a gist of it. Yeah? So all the A's again raise your hand. All the A's, the managers please raise your hand. Okay. And all the B's raise your hand now. So were you able to get the gist? Did your manager behave as a manager? Okay, I don't know whether they behaved or no because they were with you. Okay. Now, the same situation, the A's will remain as A's and the B will remain as B's. Now, A has to be wearing the hat of a coach, the being of a coach. Now, if you don't know the being of a coach, please come to me, else you will not get the context of being. The being is the presence of a coach. How would you, if you were a coach, to actually handle this particular issue with your subordinate? Issue remains the same. Some performance issues. Subordinate can behave or be in any being. I didn't give a cap to the subordinate. Now the manager had changes from being a manager to being a coach. And please take another 1.5 minutes to go back to the same role play. As a coach, you are now handling your subordinate on the same performance issues. The being changes now. So you are not a manager now, you are a coach. Time starts now. Same situation, same dynamics, your being changes. Done? Done? I'm asking this question to the B's now. Did you see a change or a shift in A? Which was better? Coach was better? Yeah? Difference between the manager and the coach? Okay, the question to all the A's, were you able to shift your being from manager to coach? Not easy if you've done it well, but not easy. Were you able to shift? In cases where you were able to move from being a manager to a coach, the bees would have been a little more happy. If you would have checked their body language, they would have been a little more open towards it. The moment you are still a manager with your subordinate, your being doesn't change. And in that being, it becomes difficult for your subordinate to really gel with you. Now, are we using this context of being in all facets of our lives? Classic example, simple example. Let's say you go back in the evening, you have a conflict with your spouse. What's your being? The next time you have a conflict with anybody, just check it out. From which particular being are you operating with your spouse? And you'll see the difference. If you are operating from, let's say, I am the managing director of my company, I am the head HR of my company, who are you to tell me? Your being is your identity. Whenever you have a problem, your problem starts with your identity, because your being is what? Your being is your identity. Your conflicts will never go away. Trust me, conflicts will never go away. You will always have challenges. Whenever you have challenges with your kids, whenever you have challenges with your spouses, friends, just be aware, what's your being? Do that exercise. The next time you have a conflict with your spouse or your bosses, what's your being? Even when your boss is saying something to you, in what form of being are you taking it? The moment I take it from the context, he is my boss, I am his subordinate, your being will change. But the moment I am taking it, hey, I am the general manager HR of my company, you may be my boss, what is my being? Being is very important. It can change the way you look at life, because being actually takes a step forward. Your action starts from your being. And simple example, just took me a couple of minutes to give you a perspective that you changed your being from a manager to a coach, your context with your subordinate changed. It's as simple as that, because changing a being is one, being aware of it. And the moment you are aware of it, you can get into another being. So far clear? Yeah? So give a high five to all the bosses and telling them that you are awesome and you did a great job. I need to hear that word, you are awesome. It's very important. It has to be louder, because I want all of your being to be awesome, you know. Okay, so let's look at, let's move on, because I don't have much time to it. Okay, so I'll show you a movie about whatever I've spoken. I'm summarizing the entire thing in this small clip. It will hardly take around 4-5 minutes. I hope it works. यहाँ से चलेगा? यहाँ से चलेगा? Audio?
Đấy, hôm nay là số chọn không biết chắc lắm không cần đủ không sao nào lớn lên đi đâu tentang apa? Woi, soal apa nak kan nih? Soal terlintas set. Tốt quá. Để nó ăn bò này. Chuột nè. Chuột nè. Đây các bạn. Xin lỗi. Sao ta mà? Biết chưa? Mẹ không? Không. Chị à? Cô sẽ chừng to à? Cô được lấy con mà. Ừ.
What was that? Context, being. If I would have told you two young kids actually picking up those snakes, you wouldn't have believed me. But look at that. I think the snakes could have been their food. I don't know. It's the being which actually makes a huge difference, and that's exactly what it is. The being. They have been brought in an environment where the being works in that way. Okay, so I don't have time, but I'll just touch upon a couple of things. Most of us into human resource face a big challenge with performance management system. Yes? No? Your silence speaks everything, because I had a challenge when I was also working. So one of the key reasons why we have challenges with performance management system is because it's all about numbers. Anything which cannot be quantified does not exist. This is one of the biggest distinctions of ontology. Anything which cannot be quantified does not exist. And people, human being, again coming back to ontology, human being have got a very skewed relation with numbers. Skewed is a diluted relation with numbers. Because if I have to ask you, when was the last time you had your vitals checked? Do you have your details about your financial numbers? Do you have your health numbers and all other numbers? Trust me, we are weak. And that's the reason moment when we talk about numbers with our employees, challenge starts. The beauty and the irony of numbers is if your spouse or your colleague or let's look at a relation between a husband and a wife, and you tell your spouse, I love you. Till the time that love is not quantified, it does not exist. Yes or no? So what is that quantification? Some jewelry, some holidays, but that's the hard fact of life. Anything which cannot be quantified does not exist. That's one reason why we have challenges with numbers. So ontology actually works a lot with human resource also. I've linked a lot of stuff of ontology with human resource, and one of the things is performance management system. Okay, so applications, something which I did develop using ontology is failure labs. What's your relation with failure? Forget about numbers. What's your relationship with failure? With the word fail. Again, the Indian society, I'm talking about the Indian society, the way we have been brought up, we have again a very skewed relation with failure. So that's again a big challenge. So something which is called a failure lab is something which we do. Ontology coaching, yes, it gives phenomenal results. Leadership development, ontology labs are the applications of ontology. Coming back to the story before I wind up, if you remember the story, what did Nikhil do differently by which he became the big man in that village? So Nikhil knew that the challenge is already, the market is already set and taken by Anil, because Anil was having a monopoly. So Nikhil did something differently. He used one of the distinctions called context. So it applies to a corporate scenario also. We are venturing into a market where already we have our competitors. Yes or no? So Nikhil had his competitor. Who were the competitors? Anil and Sunil. So already the market was there. There was a monopoly, and in spite of that, Nikhil ventured into the market. Nikhil studied the market. What he did differently was, he set the context, he changed his being, because he didn't want it to be operating from a being of just another survivor in the market. He said, I want to get into it. And he created the world of possibility. So I'm not getting into possibility. Possibility is another distinction of ontology. So he got into the market, he did a research, and he understood that there are different challenges what Anil is not really able to handle, what B is not doing it. So he was able to understand that the demography within that village, what is the consumption of the milk? How many families are there? How many kids are there in each of the families? What is their daily consumption? When it is actually getting over. So the moment it's getting over, do they have to wait for another day to go back to Anil to get their entire supply of milk? Or before it gets over, can I deliver it to their particular home? Now, when he got into this particular context of understanding the consumer from a different way of looking at it, operating from a different being, he got a very different understanding of the consumer, because A and B didn't get into the market, didn't get into the families to understand what does the consumer really want. So Nikhil went to each of the house to understand how many members are there in the family, what is the daily consumption of milk, what if I supply you milk in time, will you buy it from me? And yes, voila, because every family over there wanted the milk to be delivered at their own house, because Anil, having a monopoly, didn't want it to deliver milk to their houses. So Nikhil changed the entire dynamics of the entire system of that particular business of selling milk over that particular place, and he turned around the business. I'm just linking it to ontology because we are all from corporates, there are markets, there are competition all around, but can I create a possibility to venture into an existing market and turn around things? Can I operate from a context, and can I have a different being? I hope I gave you a context and a food of thought for looking at being. So the next time you are into a conflict with your spouse, just check what is your being. Trust me, you will never ever have challenges, because if your being changes, a lot of things change. Thank you.
Any questions
Yeah,
for
so,
Mr. Neeraj?
yes. Any questions, anything you want to ask, feel free to ask me. Anything on ontology.
We have room for 2 to 3 questions. There we are.
Don't ask me where I did ontology from. I'll tell you.
You have said anything which has been quantified that results more.
Which cannot be quantified.
Which cannot be quantified. So the what factor can be quantified, the how factor cannot be quantified, right?
Which?
The what factor can
What?
be quantified.
Anything which is not quantified in the form of numbers does not exist.
But when it comes to performance management in the any company, what factors alone will not be used, right? How it is also is needed.
Simple. If it is quantified in numbers, it exists. So let's say, for example, you report to me, for example, and you have been doing extraordinary. But for whatever reasons, if you have not quantified your extraordinary in the form of numbers, it's all about numbers by the end of the year.
I'm just putting forward the same to you. For example, the number of seminars you've taken, it's a number. It's just a number.
Correct.
But the quality which you've given in the presentation, that's the what or how factor.
Perfect, perfect. That can be quantified in the numbers because there can be a parameter to quantify that. There can be a parameter to quantify that.
But
on a scale of 1 to 10, can you quantify something?
Okay.
So everything has a parameter. Everything can be quantified. You need to know the right metrics to quantify that.
Got it.
You need to know the right metrics to quantify that.
So for example, the motivational factor, how we can quantify it now?
It cannot be quantified.
So on what
So
basis?
let's say the subordinate is really motivated. I need results. By the end of the day, it's a number game. We are working in the corporate life. Everybody is talking about profits, bottom line, top line. It's all about numbers. Your motivation, if it is not converted into a quantifiable result, it does not exist. Simple. Let's get into the hardcore facts of life. Let's get into the hardcore realities of corporate world. Anything which cannot be quantified does not exist. There's a universal distinction of ontology, and trust me, works in all facets of life, personal, professional, anywhere. Try checking it out.
Sure. Thank you.
Because you might be a highly motivated employee, but by the end of the quarter or the end of the year, if that motivation is not resulting into a number, it's not resulting into a result, or not resulting into a goal which your boss has set for you.
That's right, but when we have the numbers, when we have the success factor, that's true. But when we just face the failures, then the how factor also comes into the picture, right?
Absolutely. So that's what I gave you an example. Motivation, if it is not resulting in numbers, may not work in the long run. That's where the performance management system is still a challenge with all of us.
Yes, motivation with the right tools, with the right approach can be quantified.
Yes.
With maybe a long-term result at the end of the corporate whether the motivation improves to forward to the employee.
Motivation as such cannot be quantified till the time it does not give results. Simple. Yes.
Hi, Neeraj, this is Swati here. I wanted to know more about if you could help us with what exactly is failure labs when you have termed there.
Okay, so failure labs, what we actually do in this, first of all, if I have to ask people, what's your relationship with failure? So this question itself is very intriguing, because I've never ever thought about it. I've never ever thought about what's my relationship with failure. It's the way I've been brought up, is the way I've been looking at failure. So that's the reason I showed you that video. Can you imagine, like I'm actually fearful of snakes. But you saw the two kids over there, the way they were playing with snakes? Because that's their being. The being is such where they're playing with snakes. Now, as human beings, what is our relationship with failure? I don't even know about it. So when we get into this failure labs, first of all, we get into a consensus, where am I today when it comes to failure? Am I accepting failure? Do I run away from failure? What's my relationship with failure? When I come to that particular awareness, where am I on a scale of 1 to 10 when it comes to my awareness with failure? Then only I'll be able to accept failure and then move on to do things and take risk so that I'm okay with failure. Calculated failure, calculated risk, and the way I look at failure. So it's like using ontology from a context where I can use ontology for success.
Okay, so this is used in the corporate.
Yeah, definitely, yes. There are different applications. I gave you some applications. So those are the applications by which you can use ontology for really developing the organization.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm here for the
Hi,
whole day. You
Neeraj.
can.
I just have this side. Up and off this side.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Because I think this would be the last because we have.
Yeah.
the other
So I think
speakers.
I've just sneaked in.
Yeah, sure.
So I have two things to say. First of all, thank you very much for introducing us to this entire subject of ontology and how can it be used in HR. I think it was first time for me. My question to you is that state of being is a factor of nature and nurture. What has been my nature, how my, where I have been born, like, whatever we saw.
Perfect.
And how I have been grown up. What has been my nurture. Having said that, so I think, changing someone's state of being takes a lot of effort.
Yes.
Takes a lot of reinforcement, takes a lot of rigor. So how do you suggest, as HR professionals, as learning and development professionals, how can we actually change someone's being? It's good to know, that you have to change someone's being, but when it comes to actually applying it, where you need to spend a lot of time with that person to really change this, because as human beings, we have tendency of coming back.
Correct.
We have this
Correct.
rubber band attached to our waist, which
Absolutely.
keeps pulling us
Absolutely.
back. So how do we do that? I mean, how do we actually implement it when tomorrow I go to my organization? That's my question for you. If you
Good.
can.
So I think that's a very valid and a good question, which can be a food of thought for all of us. The first and the foremost important thing at this stage is, am I even aware of my state of being? So I need to first operate from what is my being now? So am I even aware of it? The moment I'm aware of my being, can I do an analysis of what are the different beings I actually operate from or oscillate from within a day? So I may be operating from being a father, being a boss, being my own self, which we call it the ego state, and maybe maybe a boss or a subordinate, blah, blah, blah. So let's say I operate from 10 or 12 different beings in a day. So when I'm oscillating, am I being aware of it? The moment I'm aware of my state of being, the journey starts. And then you'll be able to move to the different state of being. So when we did this role play, when I told you, operate from the state of being a manager, you actually became a manager. And then I told you, please change the state of being to a coach. So you changed. So being aware is the first step. And second, being consciously aware. So one of the exercises which I used to do with my team is like, I used to tell them what's your state of being and write down on a piece of paper when you enter your office, what's your state of being today? And if that state of being is changing, please be aware of that state of being. I hope I'm able to give you some inputs. I'm there for the whole day. I'm not going to, because he's actually giving his looks to me, so I'll stop over here. But I'm here so we can connect on that. Yeah, thank you, thank you, thanks.